I am the Salmon and Steelhead Grassroots Coordinator with Idaho Conservation League. This is the first in a series of 4 Snake River Dinner Hours. Future conversations will focus on restoration, clean energy, and transportation. You can sign up for those webinars at snakeriverdinnerhour.com. Today's topic is federal actions and commitments to restore Snake River salmon. Last month, the Biden administration released a roadmap to dam removal. This plan prioritizes the Northwest energy grid, economy, and ecology, and is a benefit for all stakeholders involved. This package promises $300 million over the next 10 years to restore native fish in the Snake and Columbia rivers, and pledges support for new tribally sponsored energy projects and a comprehensive replacement study for all services provided by the dams. This will be a moderated conversation among a group of experts, including a Q&A session. Near the end of tonight's webinar, there will also be a call to action led by Matthew Dollinger with the Sierra Club, where you can learn how to contact your elected officials about the issue. During tonight's webinar, you can drop questions into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will do our very best to answer all of your questions, either in the chat or asked to our panelists at the end of the webinar. However, we had over 620 registered participants for tonight's webinar, so there's a chance we will not get to your questions tonight. This webinar will be recorded and a link will be shared shortly. With that, Kayeloni, if you're able to turn on your camera, it is my pleasure to introduce our MC for tonight, Kayeloni Scott. Kayeloni is the Communications Director for the Northwest region at American Rivers. Kayeloni, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you all for joining us this evening during your dinner hour. We have a fantastic panel lined up to just have open dialogue and conversation on this issue. And we are honored to have the panelists with Chairman Shannon Wheeler from the Nez Perce tribe, Amanda Goodin, who's the supervising attorney with the senior attorney with Earthjustice Northwest Office, Ed Bowles, Director of Fish Division, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Liz Hamilton, who is the Executive Director for the Northwest Sportfishing Industry Association, an organization she helped found in 1993. With that, we're going to dive right into it, and I'm going to ask Chairman Wheeler open us up for the conversation and talk a little bit about the CBRI and what got folks to this place and how it's impacting Nez Perce and other tribes.
Well, good evening, Kalawit, everyone, and I just want to thank you guys for allowing us some time here to share a conversation with you and on a very important subject as we continue to fight for salmon and all that the salmon brings to the Pacific Northwest and what they've done for millions of years, of course, as we look at the litigation that has been around since 1993. I think that's really, what the basis of this is that there's been several flawed biological opinions over that course of time that the status quo wasn't getting anything done for us as far as recovery. And I think as we look into the movement that has happened to this point, there's, by coming together for the salmon, I think the Pacific Northwest will be a better place. But I think the administration itself is owed a lot of credit here too for upholding their obligations, certainly to the Nez Perce tribe and our treaty rights our treaty that we have with the U.S. I think it's important to recognize that what they've done here was are upholding the rule of law. So for us, that's a big thing. Our treaty was negotiated in 1855, and so that's the way it was done then, and that's the way it should be done now. And we have these issues surrounding agreements and benefits that we're supposed to be getting, and when we're not getting those benefits, I think that's really where the administration and for us as the Nez Perce, it's our job to come in and say, this is what we're not receiving on our end, and when they step up to the plate and say, okay, well, what can we do about it? And we put our solutions on the table, and of course, you know, we're not solving for everything, but you know, there are other people that can come into the conversation to solve for those other areas. And I really think that that's, you know, a team effort, and that's what it takes here in the Pacific Northwest to make these things happen. And I'm just thankful, you know, right now that the uh, 6 sovereigns have come together and put all this work together and come together with the administration and laid something out. You know, the framework from Congressman Simpson and the work that Jim Cramer did for Governor Inslee and Senator Murray. Was put in place, and I think those are opportunities to really look at the situation of how we can move into the future and save salmon at the same time. And I'm just thankful. I'm just really, honestly, I'm really thankful that everyone was able to come together and you know, really uphold the rule of law here. It all falls into the Constitution for us because that's where our treaty sits, and I think that's what we're doing. So.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a good point about the historic occasion for the 6 sovereigns to come together and come to a consensus and be united. And I wonder, Amanda, if you wouldn't mind just touching on how that came to be. How did we get to this point?
Sure. I can speak a little to that. And of course, you know, I've worked with the NGO organizations in the litigation for a long time, so the sovereigns themselves will have even more to say about this, no doubt. But you know, after decades of litigation, I think this really marks a huge turning point. And I think in the course of discussions with the Biden administration to see if we could find a path forward other than litigation, you know, through that process, the 6 sovereigns came together and you know, built the vision for what these 4 tribes and 2 states want to see in the basin, including the Snake River, but of course not just limited to the Snake River. It's the Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative, and it's broader than just the Snake. And it's comprehensive, and it gives us the roadmap that we need going forward. And I think just the fact that these regional sovereigns are speaking with one voice and giving us this vision, you know, that's what's really created this moment we're in now. That's what gave the Biden administration the chance to step forward and support that vision with concrete commitments. I think it can provide an incredible North Star for the NGO community as we are looking to our path forward and next steps. And it again, it gives that unity that we need to make real progress. You know, if we're all coming together and saying, this is the vision, this is where we need to go, there is so much more strength in that than in fragmentation or an NGO group speaking alone or whatever else. So I really see that unified vision and the 6 sovereigns coming together to develop that collaborative vision as what is absolutely driving this moment that we're in now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liz, you know, Amanda talked about this being a roadmap. What were some of the key highlights for you with this roadmap?
Well, we've been involved in this issue for over 30 years, and every year, roughly 400,000 citizens in the Pacific Northwest, nearly 500,000, purchase an extra license in order to be able to fish in the Columbia Basin. And I think the part of all this that has me most excited, in addition to the historic unity between the 4 treaty tribes and the 2 governors' offices, is just the concrete planning that is happening for the replacement services. I mean, the Simpson Initiative talked about it, the Murray Inslee pointed to it, the commitment to the Biden administration to look at how to replace the services, how to modernize the services, how to create economic development in communities while recovering salmon it's the most exciting time of all the years that I've worked on this issue. So I think the other part that we're really excited about is looking at the recreation replacement, in that there's 140 miles of riverbank on each side. And there will be cultural resources that will be recovered, but there will also be places for citizens to see themselves on the river, in the river, whether it's rafting, wildlife viewing, fishing, hunting, It's just such an exciting future, and this is the first real embarkment on that future that I've seen in 30 years.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I like all of those details really just demonstrate how comprehensive this plan is. And I wonder, Ed, if you can just talk about the comprehensive plan and how you all came to the realization that all of these components were critical to making it what it is.
Yeah, thanks, Kayeloni. And just want to start by, I'll talk a little bit about the 6 sovereigns, and Oregon is certainly one of those 6 sovereigns that have come together. And I'm here on behalf of Ed, but I'm part of that Oregon team that helped negotiate this agreement and help pull together the Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative. I'm not necessarily here on behalf of the governor, but Oregon has been a big player in this, and I'm happy to do my part to help share, my thinking on that journey. And I have been at this a while, so we've all had a lot of moments in time, right, on this effort, and some of them seem big. You remember the dubbed 99 decision point. We had just a lot of things that have conspired towards what can seem like, are we ever going to get over the hump on this? And I'm here to tell you, I've been at this for pushing 40 years. And this is the most legit moment in time that I've seen in my career. It's a moment in time that requires all hands on deck, regardless of your tenure or exhaustion, because this is, and it's not a perfect moment in time. If we're going to wait for a perfect moment in time, we'll wait forever. There is a sliver of opportunity in front of us, and it's going to take all of us to assertively work towards this common vision that we've established in order to see if that sliver of opportunity bears fruit. And it's not going to happen like a light switch. It's going to take some more time, but we've got a trajectory, we've got a vision, and we've got a coalition of powerful entities that are sharing that vision. And so, Kayeloni, you asked, okay, how did we all get that? Well, obviously, Oregon and many of our partners have been struggling to keep the fish from winking out for decades. And this goes even before the Endangered Species Act, but the Endangered Species Act gave a platform for some of that litigation. But as Chairman Wheeler said, it's been over 2 decades of litigation. And by the way, Oregon and our litigative partners have prevailed, I think it's 5 out of 5 times on that front. And we've gained a modicum of success translated into the water for the fish, primarily via spills at the dams and other things. But it's been a modicum of success. It has never been the ultimate solution. And that is why, after all this litigation, and Oregon could continue that litigation, but we recognize that we need a political solution that is comprehensive and addresses the key factors in order for this to work. And getting that through the courts would be challenging. And also, it's not as durable because it's not done through a sort of collaborative process to secure ownership. And so there's several key things that have come together that have given us this window of opportunity where Oregon said, hey, let's set aside the litigious pathway and hope we don't have to go back there. But if we do, we do. But let's set it aside and see if we can't make a lasting change through more of a political solution. And one of those key emerging factors, tragically, is the ongoing but seriously imperiled plight of the fish. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but they've been in peril for a long time, but there's truly a crisis afoot relative to what we call, as scientists, quasi-extinction thresholds and extinction vortices that these fish are slipping into. And so the urgency from the fish side is paramount. Another thing that has emerged that has given cause for this window of opportunity is a convergence of the science. And in the past, there's been a lot of debate on the different science relative to what's ailing the fish and what are actions needed to heal the fish and their watersheds. That debate is resolved. There'll still be many trying to exploit legitimate uncertainty within science. All science has elements of uncertainty, but the NOAA science report clearly takes the uncertainty head on and says, here are the key centerpiece actions needed to rebuild these stocks. Here's the comprehensive actions needed throughout the watersheds and across all H's that need to be taken, and it's going to take a lot of investments, but we've got to get to it because time's running out. These fish still have that sort of genetic ability to respond now, but if we keep our foot on them for much longer, they could lose that ability to respond, even if we gave them the chance in the future. So that's another piece that converged. The other is the shifting energy landscape. And without this, I don't think this window of opportunity would have been here. So, and all of us are well aware of that. It's this shifting dynamic with the ability to re-envision the role of the lower snake relative to hydropower, which hydropower is going to always be an important part of the Northwest energy portfolio. But the integration of renewables, the just burgeoning technology relative to battery storage, coupled with the decarbonization goals and mandates, all with or without the salmon, are a shifting landscape for energy that allow us to rethink the balance for that energy portfolio and re-envision the lower snake. And the last kind of convergence is political leadership that really created this window of opportunity. And, this Congressman Simpson from Idaho was a huge champion and leader to pull together and put forward his initiative. That's been followed up. Didn't get a lot of traction, right? But it was a comprehensive approach. The Murray-Inslee process started looking at what would it take to replace some of these services in the lower snake. And the President Biden administration, both the presidential memo calling for alignment with healthy and abundant stocks, as well as a shared vision for recovery and working together towards a political solution. So all of that helped those of us in the basin with a shared vision to come together, and that's the 6 sovereigns. So Oregon, Washington, and the 4 Lower River Treaty tribes, as you've mentioned, all came together and worked on the Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative. And that is the comprehensive plan. The federal commitments are not the comprehensive vision or plan to rebuild these stocks. Those are the commitments of the federal government in support of that shared vision put forward by the 6 sovereigns. And we as 6 sovereigns intend to continue promoting and advocating for that full package, complementary to the U.S. government commitments which have been lined out. And we can get into more detail on what those are and what are the distinctions with the CBRI. But I just want to be clear that this moment in time is rich and unique, but it's not perfect. And so let's not throw it out because it isn't perfect. but let's take advantage of it and try to get to that political solution that is necessary for the fish. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think that gives a really great view of what we're working with here and what got us to this point. Let's talk a little bit more about the details of what these commitments mean. So when we talk about getting stocks back to abundant levels, not just focusing on removing them from the ESA list, and working with our federal partners and them upholding, the direction that's been given by the USG. What do those elements mean, and how are we going to uphold those commitments to ensure that we're working toward restoration and recovery? Maybe
Well,
Chairman Wheeler, you want to chime in, or did you have a comment, Ed? You can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Oh, well, I can just kind of contextualize what we're reaching for, because a lot of folks get confused of, hey, we're trying to go back to pre-European development and healthy and abundant. Well, I just want to say that currently for wild stocks, the Snake River stocks that are most imperiled, we're at about 1% of their historic potential. That's not sustainable. That's extinction recipe. We're looking through this first stage of this rebuilding to just get to 10% of this historical potential of these watersheds, and find that balance of other vital regional economies to make room for just 10% of their historic potential. So I just wanted to make it clear that we're not talking about pre-European development. We're talking about going from 1%, which is a guaranteed extinction pathway, to about 10% of potential, so that we can have sustainability and provide the ecological and economic and cultural benefits from these stocks. So I just wanted to clarify that first, and then I'll let Chair Wheeler hop in.
Well, thank you for that, Ed. And, as a tribal member and a fisherman, I fished a lot of the headwaters, and, I could, you can imagine the numbers that would be comfortable for a fisherman to be able to go and harvest fish. And I think that's really what we're after, is that those numbers are sustainable and growing, and we don't have to worry about, the numbers of fish, or we're limited to the amount that we can actually catch. And that's been the situation for quite some time now. And I think getting the fish in those numbers are, for myself, I mean, like, tribal take here is that, our tribal members want to be able to fill their freezers and, their drying sheds and their, the canning that needs to happen. I mean, that's really the basis for us in getting those numbers back. That's a realistic number. It's really not based on anything, that's outside of that. It's tied to who we are and what our culture actually, what it means to our culture. And so, I mean, there's nothing better than catching a fish with your father and watching him catch them, and then eventually you get to catch one and share those times and those stories with one another. It's something that you remember for the rest of your life, from the first time you catch a fish, a salmon, and even more so when you're taking one out of the jar and eating it in the wintertime. And it's just the taste of salmon and what it does to you, and how well you sleep at night because of that. Those are the comforting things. That we have a lot of children that are hungry on our reservation, and their cupboards are empty and their refrigerators are empty. And this is about getting something back that speaks to the wealth of that was transferred out. And that's, for us, we see the Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative as giving a lot to everybody, but once again, trying to get the salmon back to where you know, we're comfortable with being able to have enough for ourselves, and I think, you know, that's it kind of comes last again, you know, it really does, and you know, we all have to admit that. We definitely admit that you know, these other things have to take place first, and it's not what we want, you know, it's we would rather have the salmon first and the salmon on their timeline first, and you know, let's fix everything else later. But you know, the reality of it is that these things need to be replaced, and we need to be able to get salmon back in the water. And if that's what we have to do to roll the dice to be able to make that happen, then that's what we're going to do. We'll take that chance because it's that important to us.
You
I
know,
think you
Chair
bring up a good point
Wheeler,
that the commitments were positive and they were, you know, it was good news, but there were still concerns. You know, and I want to pull in Liz a little bit too, just with your background. You know, what were your thoughts with the agreements and impacting the industry? It being good news, but also, like Chairman Wheeler said, not necessarily putting salmon first. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that was tough. It could be it can never move fast enough. But I think, as was said earlier, we had wins in court, but they weren't going to bring the salmon back. And I really want to take a moment to honor the heroes here, at least to me on screen. Without the leadership of the Perce and the state of Oregon, I'm not sure there would be any fish in the river right now. So I'm grateful that the working court has kept the fish where they are, but we're not going to move to the abundance that Chairman Wheeler mentioned until we get to work on this agreement. So it's hard not to put the fish first. It is. It puts tears in your eyes. But it also, I'm just full of hope because these opportunities have not presented themselves before. The unanimity between the states and tribes and NGOs, the fact that our region came together and developed goals for abundance. And this was done with 4 state governors' offices and with utilities and ports and tribes and fishermen at the table. We know what our abundance goals are. We have an administration committed to it. We have our North Star with the plan. And so while I wish the fish were first, we got to get on it. We just have to hold our decision makers accountable to continue to move forward and to fund these activities because the fish don't have a lot of time to wait.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Amanda, you represented multiple groups during this process. And so what were your thoughts there on, you know, what the commitments provided and what they didn't necessarily?
Yeah, I guess I'll speak a little maybe to, I think, that and what you kind of mentioned earlier, that there, you know, maybe a sense of disappointment in some quarters that you know, we didn't go further in this first step. And, you know, it's true that the fish need more than they get out of this initial set of commitments. We know that, you know, what we have now is not enough to even prevent extinction, let alone rebuild to that healthy and abundant level that's so essential for tribal treaty rights, for healthy ecosystems, for commercial and sport fishermen. You know, we know we're not there. This isn't the finish line yet. And I think, to me, part of what that puts a spotlight on is the fact that we're in a unsustainable place now where we have, you know, we have a lot of reliance on the river for a lot of different uses, and doing what the fish need and making sure those other reliance interests are, you know, are also honored and protected is, you know, right now we're stuck. We're at a bit of an impasse. But that's why I see this moment and this agreement and set of commitments as so key, because we now have a path to get past that impasse. I think we have a path to do a deeper dive into replacement services than has ever been done before. You know, there have been a lot of studies, a lot of folks have looked at this, but I think this will be more detailed and more of a collaborative effort across entities than we've seen before. And so I think it gives us the path to a win-win solution where we're not having to pit kind of these critical regional interests against each other, right? Where we can put the fish first, and also make sure that the other interests in the basin can still continue. You know, the other uses of the river can be served in other ways. So that's, you know, I think there's reasons that this is going to take time. There's reasons this is going to take a ton of effort, but I think we do actually have a path now. And I think, you know, making sure we stay on it is going to involve a lot of concerted effort with, you know, within the region, and especially with members of Congress. That's going to be a key step moving forward, because this is a big difference, right, between this path and the litigation path we've been on forever. You know, in litigation, you can get changes to river operations potentially, potentially other things, but what you can't get is the type of investments in all of the things that we need to benefit fish, including, you know, major habitat investments, upgrades to hatchery facilities. You can't get investments in replacement services that we know that we need. So I think that this gives us a way out of that box, you know, where we're just in like dividing the pie too many different ways and it's not working. This gets us to a place where we can get a win-win solution.
And
Thank you.
you know,
Go ahead, Ed.
well, Amanda and Chair Wheeler and Liz all brought up the you know, the kind of frustration of you know, we're not necessarily putting the fish first in the interim, but from a biological standpoint, we have to try to accomplish this, because this isn't just about reaching for rebuilding. In the face of climate change, we can't operationally keep these fish around with just modicums of spill and you know, these court battles. In the face of climate change, we have to move forward with these centerpiece actions, including Lower Snake River restoration, including passage in the Upper Columbia, including significant habitat improvements in the Mid-Columbia for those stocks, as well as the other comprehensive actions. So it isn't just to rebuild, particularly in the Snake River, it's to keep them around. So once stocks are as depressed as they are now, it's all about avoiding additional generational decline. And you can't avoid additional generation decline in the face of downturns in ocean and other environmental downturns without these centerpiece actions like Lower Snake River restoration. And the science report is clear on that this is also your best opportunity to avoid additional declines, and we don't have any more room for decline. And so this has to be our path forward, not just for rebuilding, but to avoid extinction. And we believe through this Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative, we give ourselves 2 fish generations, you know, 8 to 10 years to accomplish this. And that gives us the space to work towards the investments needed to ensure continuity of services related to the Lower Snake River and the services that river's providing for power, agriculture, water supply, all of that, transportation. And all of the sovereigns are committed to securing that continuity of services. That does put risk on the fish. We are going to be watching them carefully. We're in, you know, an El Nino now, and if things go south for the fish, there may be some interim actions needed improvement. But we feel we've got these 2 generations to see if this political solution plays out.
You know, Ed, just real quick, well, because
Yeah.
you had mentioned this, but we're talking about these timelines and the commitments potentially is an agreement for 10 years. So what does that mean when we're talking about the fish timelines and having this agreement for 10 years? How do those work together, and what are we looking at? Are things going to happen fast enough to ensure that we don't lose salmon? And I'd love to hear from any of you to talk about this piece a little bit more.
So there are specific commitments that are setting the table for a decision down the road relative to continuity of service associated with the Lower Snake River, relative to funding levels appropriate for doing the habitat work needed. There's another agreement for passage, in the Upper Columbia. So all of those are playing out. In the Lower Snake, it's about table setting. It's about table setting that'll take us into the next administration, that where there'll be a decision made based on that table setting on, no administration is going to be pre-decisional on that. So we're going to set the table with the information on the continuity of services, and then that will inform a potential request to Congress for authorization and appropriations. And that all happens well before the 10 years from our perspective. And the CBRI is very clear on that, because those investments have to be put in place so that the investments play out in time to implement the action by the end of the 8 to 10 years. So the decision to move forward needs to occur much earlier in the process. And so different sovereigns will be able to gauge whether that progress is occurring and make appropriate decisions on that timeline way before 10 years is up. The 10 years is to get things actually implemented. From that.
That's great. Any other thoughts on that?
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Chair Wheeler, please.
I was just thinking, when I was talking about that, I was, of course, I know all these different things need to be in place, and we need to put together all these replacement, like transportation, irrigation, and energy, grid upgrades, understanding all that, getting that in place. It just, for us, we start right away on that. We go to Salem, we go to Olympia, we go to Boise, we go to DC, and we meet with different groups and community, and hopefully we're scheduling meetings with the irrigators, with the grain growers, the transportation people, and just trying to reach out to as many places as we can to try to get this information moving forward, and trying to get an understanding of the needs of everyone. And I know that's conversations that we're having, and is it fast enough? We hope that it is. And I know the work that has been done under the CRBI that is for the salmon, but it's just for us, we losing some spill, and it wasn't too great, that summer spill, and that those runs that we're recovering there, where, as Ed said, we're going to really watch those. But I mean, it's just difficult to take that, it's like, okay, we have to, though, but we also have to go to work. And so, we can't spend a lot of time talking about it when, we really have to go to work. And that's what we're doing at Perce, and we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to, keep our nose to the grindstone, and just continue to work wherever it's needed at. And that's been our goal since the beginning.
I'd like to add, if I could, that one of the things we're hearing, since this came out, is just this pretty significant gloom and doom that the agreement itself is going to cause huge rate pressure increases for power rates, and then also that the rate payers are likely to bear the burden for the additional investments needed for the Lower Snake River restoration, things like that. And the CBRI is very clear on this, is that, and then the federal commitments put a very firm stamp on this, is that during the agreement itself, the rate pressures, relative to Bonneville and that are all known and identified, and the reimbursable's clear, and I think Bonneville's done its own rate analysis of less than 1% for this particular agreement, through the tenure of this plan. But even moving forward, the intent of the six sovereigns is not to have the burden of these investments borne by the ratepayers or solely by the region. It includes a national recognition of the importance of this issue and the conservation of the salmon and the investments needed for the region. And this would be nationally supported through appropriations and other tools. And so I just want to be clear that nobody here is talking about this huge financial investment all resting on the backs of Northwest ratepayers.
Thanks for that, Ed. I think that's a good segue to the question portion of this. Of course, we've received several questions from attendees, and thank you for submitting those. As mentioned earlier, we might not get to all of them, but we will try to answer as many as we can. So with that, one important part of this is the connection to orca. And I've heard from other leaders that we have a mutual relation, and that is the salmon. And that's why orca is just as critically important to this process. I'm wondering if one of y'all wanted to chime in a little bit about the connection to the orca.
I can speak to that briefly. We know that our orcas, especially our southern residents, are in terrible shape. Are highly endangered, and the primary threat is lack of food, and specifically lack of Chinook salmon. And when they're feeding offshore, as opposed to in Puget Sound, they are often found at the mouth of the Columbia Snake, and they're there for a reason. They're there because historically they knew that that's where they could find food, and they're not finding the same volume of food there anymore. And I think it's always been, there are hatchery fish. They can feed off of some hatchery fish in addition to the wild runs that are so very imperiled. The wild fish are at such low numbers is definitely not enough to save the orca. But even with hatchery fish, we're still looking at a fraction of the fish in the river that were there relative to historic abundance. And we know that we just can't produce enough fish to meet their needs with the dams in place. I think an interesting point relative to that is there were targets for hatchery fish put in place when the dams were first built, and for some runs those targets have never been met. Those targets weren't for orcas, those targets were for the tribes. So that's another huge injustice there, that those targets have gone unmet for all of these years. But the orca feel that too, right? That's also their food, and the fact that we are not, we simply can't sustain a healthy river, a healthy fish populations, and enough food for the orcas with the system we've got in place. So I think rebuilding runs throughout the Columbia Basin, the Snake River, but also the Mid-Sea, to levels where there's just more Chinook available, especially Chinook available for the orcas, I think we will see a difference in those populations. It's their biggest threat.
Well, and just quickly, keystone species like salmon, when they're impoverished, everything else is impoverished because they're the drivers for the ecosystem. I mean, they are the original redistributors of wealth. They take all this marine wealth through its nutrients and other things into the watersheds. They feed the orcas. They provide cultural, spiritual, economic sustenance, redistribute urban wealth to rural areas. I mean, that's what keystone species do, is when they're impoverished, everything else is impoverished. And it also, as we heal up, not just, salmon and orcas, salmon and watersheds, but climate resilience, as we do what's right by the salmon and our watersheds heal, we're also helping increase the resilience for water scarcity, drought, high temperatures, by returning these watersheds to those sponge-like characteristics that help mitigate for those hot, dry summers. And all of that is related to salmon. That's, in my mind, why many of our honored tribal representatives had them as a centerpiece to their universe, is because scientifically they are such a keystone species.
Thank you. So we know that in order to breach the 4 lower Snake River dams, it requires an act of Congress. So what is the process to getting to that point? And how long do we think that'll take?
I personally look at it in 2 steps, and we're well on our way to, or 3 steps, and we're well on our way to the second step. As Ed said, the science is resolved. And now we're gathering the information together to create a supplemental EIS. And once these 2 things are lined up, it is then in Congress's pocket. We will be looking at them and we will be saying, are you for extinction? Or are you for abundance, for treaty rights, for economic modernization for the region? And we're going to know that answer really soon, but only if the 6 sovereigns continue to lead and the rest of our society continue to demand urgency from the decision makers that Chairman Wheeler mentioned earlier that they're going to meet with. And so it will go to Congress, but only if we demand it.
You know, I want to add on to that just real quick, Liz, if I can. You know, I agree that we are going to need to demand this from members of Congress with urgency, and that there's going to be a moment, I hope, in the future when there's a decision from this administration that that's our path forward, that we need the dams to come out, that this is what replacement services need to look like. I hope that moment will be in around 2026 under the schedule that we have under the U.S. commitments. There's, you know, no commitment to what the decision will be, but there's a commitment to revisit the documents that govern kind of the plan for the basin and the plan for the dams. And at that moment, the ball will clearly be in Congress's court if what we have from the administration is a decision saying the dams have to come out and this is what we need to do to make that possible. There's specific investments we need. But Congress isn't off the hook between now and then. All of the same things that we need to do to make sure, to ensure continuity of services, you know, those are all things that are going to help uplift the region. They're going to modernize our infrastructure. There are so many things that we can be investing in now that will benefit our regional economy, that will benefit salmon, and that will make the path smoother. And we all need to be pushing for those things today and tomorrow, not just you know, once we have a decision from the administration, if that's the decision we get, that the dams need to come out. So I think it's a push on all fronts, like you said, Liz, and I think it's showing Congress and showing stakeholders in the region now exactly the ways that these modernizations and these benefits can really uplift the region and can ensure continuity of services.
Thank you. You know, one of the questions that keeps coming up is about treaty rights. Do these commitments uphold treaty rights? And if so, how? And if not, how can we ensure that they do uphold the treaty rights?
Anyone want to get that question? If not, I'll take it. You know, I guess the biggest thing here is that, you know, the treaty rights, of course, sit in the Constitution, as I said before, under Article 6, Clause 2. And, you know, for the federal government to come forward and to, once again, negotiate with us something as important as something that was promised to us under Article 3 in our treaty that gives us the right to take fish at all usual and custom places, I think they're upholding their obligation to that by coming forward and accepting the challenge to try to resolve the issues outside of court and to permanently fix these issues. And I think, you know, over the course of time since 1993 and previously, you know, since the inception of the Columbia River System of Operations, that there's been a decline of an erosion of our treaty rights because of the lack of salmon. So, you know, if you was to consider a treaty and the United States and the Nez Perce, for instance, had access to a treaty bridge that we could both cross, you know, we could go back and forth. That would be something that was, you know, their obligation to us and our obligation to the United States for mutual benefit. And so that has crumbled away over the course of time and through different challenges. I mean, we can look at the challenges that the Yakama Nation has faced, maybe 4 challenges to them and their treaty rights that have crumbled that away. Nez Perce, we've seen, you know, maybe the Arthur case and a couple other cases, but nothing that has been challenged in that manner. But, you know, that's over the course of time, you know, you kind of forget about what that treaty actually meant and what the tribe's role in those treaties were. And so, you know, is it getting back to that? Yeah, I believe it is. I believe that this administration is understanding that their obligation to us and as a fellow executor of the rule of law is something that they take serious, and they understand that that's their obligation under the Constitution, and we understand that as we're all oath takers here too as well. And you know, you raise your hand, or you're either in by affirmation or by oath, or judges are bound by treaty. They know the law, and so they know their obligation. So yeah, I do believe that this administration is coming forward and upholding the treaty rights by negotiating here with the sovereigns and with our tribe that things need to change, and how can we help change that? You know, we always look at that as an obverse relationship, one side of the coin, and the other side, you know, neither side can see each other, but they're minted of the same for mutual benefit. And I think that's truly where we're at right now. And you know, we continue to hope that the administration continues to work with us in this manner. All it's going to do is strengthen the treaties, therefore strengthening the Constitution of the United States and the belief in the Constitution.
Thank you. We have about just a minute left, but there's one question I want to pose to all of you, if you wouldn't mind just giving a short, quick answer. What lessons have you learned from the dam removals on the Klamath River?
I can start real quick. I have learned a few things from watching that process unfold. I've learned that it can take a very long time, but that success is possible. I've learned that following the leadership of the tribes is absolutely critical to the success of those efforts. And I think we are already learning and will continue to learn that when you give the fish a restored river, they can recover. So it's a really exciting time to see that happening. And I think it shows us that there is a path forward here as well.
Liz?
Collaborative efforts work, and dams are not forever.
Well said. Ed?
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, it just resonates with the soul to see a river restored, particularly a river of that magnitude that has such critical ecological and cultural importance that the salmon provided. And so it's I'm a scientist, but it's a hallelujah moment, and I know the fish will respond.
And Chairman Wheeler?
I think I look at it from a spiritual connection. I have you know, family that fish the Klamath and live on the Klamath. I have a brother that lives there and has children that are Yurok Indians, and you know, they pray and they want the return of salmon. They know that, you know, they still have their ceremonies down there, and it just means a lot that we're able to learn from that. You know, their connection is our connection as well. So we're all interconnected, and it just reinforces what we believe.
Thank you all so much for sharing your dinner hour with us this evening, and for your continued advocacy and support to free the Snake River. It takes champions like you to get us to this point and continue moving us forward. And as we wrap up, I want to go ahead and hand it over to Matthew Dollinger with Sierra Club.
Thanks so much, Kayeloni, and thank you to all our panelists for coming and speaking with us and just lending your experience on this campaign to us. We really appreciate it. So we had a lot of questions about ways that you folks could get involved and kind of help continue this campaign, make your mark on it. If you'll see in the chat, we'll have Rain be posting a link there in the chat very shortly. That link will take you to a site where if you fill in your information, fill in where you're from, your address, regardless of where you are in the United States, it'll allow you to send a message to the Biden administration, to your specific representatives, asking them to support the Biden plan, to get the ball moving on this issue, and to just show your Congress people that you support this issue and it's what their constituents want to see. And so if it's a congressperson who has already vocalized their support, it'll be a thank you message, or if it's someone who hasn't done so yet, it'll be encouraging them to do something like that. So click that link, fill out with your info, and yeah, it's a great way for you to get involved right now.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Again, thank you to our panelists. Ed, you said that we're in such a legit moment, and I just thought too legit to quit. So we're going to keep going and doing what we got to do to get the next step. Please join us during our next Snake River Dinner Hour next month. And we'll have another great lineup of panelists and some more wonderful conversation talking about how we will get to freeing the Snake River. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.